We begin today's news review in Jerusalem. They'll show you the front page of The Independent. 4 Israeli soldiers have been killed in a lorry attack in Jerusalem. The driver was a Palestinian. He was shot dead. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has suggested the Islamic State group was involved.
The front page of The Guardian looks at UK Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson, who's flown to New York for the UK's first formal face-to-face meetings with US President-elect Donald Trump's administration.
Arab news next, and a picture here on the front page of former Iranian President Akbar Hashemi Rafsanjani, who has died at the age of 82.
International New York Times front page shows a Swarovski crystal glove worn by Michael Jackson. I'm sure you've seen that before. The article looks at how items such as this are among certain objects a US body is trying to recover from corrupt regimes who use their country's wealth to enrich themselves.
It's called the Kleptocracy Asset Recovery Initiative. That is a great name. Trying to seize a glove like this for one of Equatorial Guinea's ruling family members. And finally, the iPhone turns 10 years old. This is in Gulf News, having a look at how Apple's ubiquitous smartphone became a modern-day icon. I hate using the word icon, but actually I have to say it might well fit. Henry Bonsu is here. Henry is a broadcaster.
Am I an icon?
You are an icon. You're soon to become an icon. The more
Thank you.
times you appear on this programme, the more you become an icon.
Keep on inviting me, I'll always come.
Look, let's start with Jerusalem. We ended our week last week on Thursday with Azoria, the Israeli soldier, young man who has been convicted of manslaughter for shooting dead a Palestinian who was on the ground and not armed at the time. And here we have a Palestinian driving a truck into a group of Israeli soldiers.
I mean, there were serious questions asked after the truck attacks in Nice and then the Berlin Christmas market, you know, not guarded. But you would expect open areas like this in Jerusalem, the promenade into the Old City, to have been guarded, especially if soldiers were present in the area. But it appears that this guy drove the truck into those soldiers, 4 dead, 17 injured. This puts more pressure on Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister, because, of course, at the moment, he's already being investigated for corruption charges. But one reason why the Israeli population still supports him is he's seen as a strong man of the region, a man who can keep them safe. But if attacks like this, as well as the stabbing attacks, continue, then people will start to call that into question.
And it makes the entire peace process so much more difficult. John Kerry, the US Secretary of State, making a speech last week in which he was extremely harsh on Israel. By all accounts, whichever side you support, because most people support one side or the other, and it's so emotive, he was extremely harsh on Israel, and Israel kind of picked up on that and said they didn't appreciate it.
Well, this is it, and this is one of the reasons why Netanyahu is threatening to withdraw UN subs, you know, the membership fees that all nations that belong to the United Nations have to pay. But I spent a fair amount of time at the UN in New York, and the Kerry view is quite a popular view, especially among the developing world nations who are not happy with what's going on in Israel, especially as far as the Palestinians are concerned.
It kind of leads on to Donald Trump in a way, although our Trump story today is about
the Foreign Secretary going there.
Yes.
My Trump story or your Trump story?
Well, yes, our Trump story.
Your Trump story.
And amazingly, who did he meet? Trump's son-in-law.
Yes, Jared Kushner, who Trump is a great fan of, and who Trump himself has said maybe Jared can bring peace to the Middle East. He hasn't explained yet the detail of how that's going to work. But it's interesting that, this guy, Boris Johnson, is very well known in Britain and in the European Union, is the first member of the British government to speak to a member of the Trump team at high level. He's not meeting Donald himself.
This is the first official meeting.
The first official meeting. It's going to be interesting to see what they're going to have in common. One of the things I've spotted is that Trump, as well as Boris Johnson, have had issues with President Obama's origins. We know that Trump believed he wasn't born in the United States, and Boris Johnson called him a part Kenyan. So that's one thing that will unite them. But also the fact that Britain looks as though it's going to go for a hard Brexit, won't be part of the customs union, won't be part of the single market, which means it is doubly important that it has a really good and quick trade deal with the United States, because if you're going to lose 44% of your overseas export, i.e. the European Union, you're going to need somebody else to fill in the gap.
Can I mention one other?
You can. Thing in common.
Commonality, yeah. The media takes the mickey out of both of them when it comes to their hair.
Well, indeed. Both
Boris
blonde and looking like a dead animal, you might say.
Well, I wasn't going to say that. But
no, we'll talk about the hair.
Hair in the wind.
Yes, something like
hair
that.
in the wind shots.
What about this line? How concerned is the business community? The line coming out of one of Donald Trump's top people that actually Brexit is a good chance for us, the Americans, to steal business away from the UK.
Well, it's quite interesting that in this article in The Guardian, it talks about the fact that this trip is very important because the US-UK relationship needs to be hammered out before the Brexit negotiations officially start between the UK and Europe.
Yeah.
I mean, everything is changing, including the trade relationship between the UK and the United States.
Suffer.
Yeah, especially if Donald Trump carries out his threats to essentially disown NATO, but I suspect that wiser heads will prevail. I mean, a lot was said about Barack Obama not really feeling England, not really being an Anglophile because of his, quotes, part Kenyan roots. But I think rumours of the death of the special relationship have been really exaggerated by the so-called Trumpsters and people led by Nigel Farage, the UK Independence Party here in this country. I think the relationship has always been strong.
Okay, well,
Front page of Arab News has several stories, not least, of course, you would expect, the death of Iran's former president.
Yes, Ali Akbar Rafsanjani. Now, I say that, very, very fluently because I remember studying him when I was doing geography in the late 1970s, early 80s at school in Manchester. And we had a lot of Iranian refugees who came in because they obviously were fled the Islamic Revolution. And Ali Akbar Rafsanjani was the moderate face of that revolution, while Ayatollah Khomeini was the hardliner. And throughout the last 30 or so years, he's been the guy who's been able to rein in the so-called hardliners and push people like the current president, Rouhani. Rouhani to the fore. And his presence, or his absence, will be missed. Because he's a guy who will really prevail on wiser heads, especially if Donald Trump carries out his threat to wreck the Iran nuclear deal.
Apparently, he was the president of Iran when Iran issued that fatwa against Salman Rushdie.
Yes, 1989 to 1997.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Which is quite surprising, given that he's seen as a moderate.
Yeah, we really like the story in the New York Times of this kleptocracy asset recovery initiative.
Yes, as you said, a strange name.
Amongst the things that is trying to recover from the Equatorial Guinean ruling family is that Michael Jackson glove. What's it doing in Equatorial Guinea?
I know, but it just goes to show how crazy some of the people are at the top of some of the African governments. I mean, in this case, why on earth, when you lead a country where most people live on less than $2 a day, are you spending, who knows what the figure is, hundreds of thousands of pounds, maybe millions of pounds on Michael Jackson's glove? Other things that the US government is seeking to return are, £3 billion worth, $3 billion worldwide, being frozen by the program, including a Malibu mansion, $500 Ferrari, and the financiers of the movie The Wolf of Wall Street apparently used that money, which belongs to the Malaysian people, to fund that film.
Yes, that's right, yeah.
And
I remember that as a story.
Just saw a story, and I don't know if it's current, but it was written up at the weekend, about a Nigerian minister who's been told to repay $153 million.
That's right,
sake.
yes.
How does the minister get 153
Who knows, with a lot of support in a regime that is tanking.
Yeah, that's right. That's Nigeria specifically.
Yes,
I mean, that is a...
That's from the Good Luck Jonathan regime, wasn't it?
Yeah.
On this day, 9th of January, 10 years ago, Steve Jobs, the then boss of Apple, held up the first Apple iPhone at a big presser. And many are saying this changed the world.
Well, it changed the game. It's hard to remember this, but back in 2007, most people had Blackberries and Nokia phones. I had a Blackberry myself. And the iPhone, as they say in America, has changed the game.
I would agree with that, wouldn't you?
Well, I would, however, not for me, because I'm a Samsung Android man myself.
I don't have an iPhone. Do you have an iPhone?
I do, but the point is, it changed the game in the sense of what these phones can actually do.
What they can do and what they look like. It's a style thing, though.
Samsung or an Apple.
Absolutely, but I think the style thing is what keeps it premium. People like it because they see it, they associate it with status, whereas we Android people, I don't know, maybe we're second-class citizens.
I don't know. It's interesting you say associated with status because the other guy in the picture on the front page of Gulf News is Barack Obama.
Yes, indeed.
Who preferred a BlackBerry, and I don't know if he still does. And if it was about status, people would say, "Hey, the president of the United States has got a BlackBerry," and BlackBerry is practically finished, isn't it?
Isn't it more about what these devices can actually do, and that's why the game was changed. Because when the iPhone was launched, it launched a whole new era in what that device or a Samsung or another version, Google Pixel, can do.
I can see you've drunk the Kool-Aid on this, on the iPhone. But I mean, one of the reasons why President Obama, I think, stuck to the BlackBerry, or the Crackberry, as some people describe it, is because he wanted to be retro, uber cool. The first hip-hop president. That's probably what he was trying to do.
Yes, that's right. So he's got 11 more days, Henry.
11 more
and then
days.
Donald Trump will be standing there in front of the, I think it's the Congress building, is it? They'll
That's
shake
right.
hands. And,
He'll be sworn in.
The test of the
it will.
president on the cool stakes is how he looks in the ASEAN
Yes,
photo
indeed.
when they all have to wear the same Hawaiian shirts.
Will
that
he
kind
go
of thing.
there?
We're out of time. Thank you very much, Henry
Thank
Bonsu.
you.
And thank you to you.
Have a
Bye-bye.
good day. Bye-bye.